Well, hello, Nicole Hennig. How are you?
Hi. Good. How are you?
Good. Welcome to Search in the Information Landscape. We're delighted that you're here.
Hmm.
My students who may have seen another one of our visits may remember that you spent 14 years at MIT working in library technologies, I believe, and you'll help me refine this later. You went off on your own for a while. You were working on apps for librarians, your blog, you're doing workshops and writing books. Now we find you at University of Arizona.
Hmm.
And can you tell us your exact title there?
Yeah, I'm e-learning developer.
Hmm.
So I collaborate with my colleagues to make online tutorials for students to do online. My
Right.
boss is an instructional designer, and then she works with the subject matter experts, and then I bring the stuff to life. Like she creates, quizzes and scripts for videos and everything, and then I actually use the tools to create all the stuff.
That's wonderful. And what is your favorite tool these days? Because I know my students are working on
Uh,
these things as well.
I think it's Articulate Rise. I really
Yeah.
like that for setting up a tutorial website. It's got so many nice features.
Great. We will take a look at that. I think that one is a pay thing, but
Yeah.
yeah, we will take a look at that. And but today we are here to talk about generative artificial intelligence. And because this is a course that's largely about search, we're looking at how it impacts the field of study in this course. How is it impacting search? And
Mhm.
but first, I think I want you've been talking a lot about AI literacy, and that's something I think our LIS students need to be aware of because they need to be AI literate and they need to spread this type of literacy um, with their communities. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, I would say that it's the ability to critically evaluate the AI technologies and to be able to communicate and collaborate with AI and use it as a tool both, for your personal life and the workplace. And I think in order to do that, you need to understand some basics of the technology underlying it. You don't have to be a machine learning data scientist or anything. You don't even have to be a coder of any type, but you need to know something about how these things work under the hood and be able to teach that to other people.
Right.
Because right now there's a big lack of that literacy in society overall. So many people don't know anything about how these tools work. And we kind of map our old models onto them, like we think of it as a giant database full of keywords, and it's nothing like that. ChatGPT is not a database of keywords. It's a neural network, and it's designed like networks in the human brain, and it's been trained with some data. But once it's trained, you can throw all that data away and set it aside. It doesn't even contain those words anymore. It turns it all into math, probabilistic math, and so it's a giant network full of math, is what it is, and it's all very based on probability.
Gotcha. So if you were teaching pre-service librarians, what are the things you would think were most important, especially as it relates to search, information finding, information seeking? What are the skills that you would like librarians who are coming to the University of Arizona to be coming prepared with?
Hmm. Well, it's all the usual stuff, of course, that we've always taught about databases and searching and all of that. But now it's a whole bunch of new stuff too, because I think the more you can have some experience with ChatGPT and similar tools and have tried all sorts of different things, try to use it for your own work, try to use it to brainstorm things, then you'll be ahead of the people who are already working here because our own staff still needs to learn all this stuff. We've done some workshops, well, not really formal workshops. We've done some department meetings just with our department, which is about student learning and engagement, where we, like at the beginning, like in January, I made an FAQ about it and shared it with my group, and then just sort of talked them through some things. And then we took a few minutes and people tried it, and then we came back and talked about it. But that's really not enough. So I still want to do more training for our own staff. But I did do one, like I made sort of a version that was the same as I did for the ALA webinar that I did a while back. And I did that for our staff, and I saved the recording so that other people could watch it and kind of shared that around widely. So I think there's still a big gap. And while you're still in library school, you can like get ahead of the game by just jumping into all of this AI stuff and trying out all the tools and keeping like, keep track of some of the things you learn, some of the things that work and don't work, just, and then sign up for any courses that are available. I'm taking one right now from ALA, just kind of to see how they designed it so I can make a better course in the future. But
That's
but,
good.
but we're all learning together at this point. This thing is so new. Everyone's learning, from kids to college students to faculty, instructors, librarians, everybody, we're all learning it together. So jump in and start learning.
Right. And I think it might be a little scary, but it is critical that we lead.
Yeah,
Um, because in terms of this literacy, as you said in some of your previous work, this is like media literacy and like digital literacy. It's another one that largely the responsibility for teaching should fall on librarians. We should be helping faculty make sense of this. We're helping students K-12 or K-20 make sense of this, and communities that we serve in our public libraries, because among the issues we're facing is, how are we going to fact check this content? How are we going to ensure that missing voices, we're aware of the missing voices, because there's likely bias in the data that these engines were trained on.
right. Exactly. So we recently just made two LibGuides, one for instructors and one for students, about ChatGPT, and the instructor guides got a lot more details on it. We call it AI literacy in the age of ChatGPT, and we've got a lot of links to things that sort of forward-thinking faculty and instructors are doing with AI in their classes, so they can get some ideas. There's a crowdsourced list of classroom policies that someone at another university is putting
I think
together.
it's Eaton, and that's one
Yeah,
of the things we'll be sharing. Yep.
so we link to that. We also, we've always been kind of an underappreciated partner to the faculty because we offer, our liaison librarians offer a lot of services. I don't think we're really all that good at marketing ourselves because a lot of people don't even know about it, but we can we can collaborate with faculty to build information literacy into their course, like throughout, not just the one shot little instruction thing one day. So my colleague Nicole has made a whole little mini course for faculty, and she got a grant so she could pay them to take it.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
she's done a few cohorts of that, and she's on sabbatical right now, but she'll do it again next year. And I'd like to build some more AI literacy into that little course that she's teaching, but I also want to build it into everything we're doing, like all the basic information literacy, how to, because we have tutorials about fact checking. So let's put that side by side with tutorials about ChatGPT, and then people can learn it together. They can learn how to check what comes up with, and then see how reliable it is. And it just needs to be blended into everything we're already teaching.
Yeah, and add the layer of you're responsible as a human for adding the prompts that will result in better output.
Right. And that's a huge thing. Like, people need to experiment with prompting and learn about prompting. There's a good free course at learnprompting.org. And it just makes such a huge difference how you talk to it. And also to keep iterating. Like, when you're talking, it's a conversation, like if it doesn't quite give you what you want, ask it to change it. And it's kind of neat because it's like, okay, now we're moving into a world where the English language is your operating system. Like in the old days, you had to learn a command line thing, like with DOS or something. And then it was so exciting when we had a graphical user interface and you could have menus and select things from a menu and have a trash can metaphor or recycle bin metaphor, like all that. I remember when it was new. And now, well, there was another step in there, like with Siri and Alexa voice assistants, to be able
Yeah.
to talk a little bit to things, but the quality of their responses is not that smart. And so, because everything has to be pre-programmed. But now with these AI tools, it's like our interface is just the English language. I mean, it does talk in other languages too, but since most of the training data is in English, it's better with English.
What are you excited about? What sorts of things, especially relating to search, are you excited about?
I think the concept of grounding is a really important concept because that can help make the hallucination problem less severe, where it makes things up.
What does grounding mean?
So grounding is when you give a language model something to a source of reliable information to use as its first place to look, right? So Bing Chat does that, for example. Like, as much as the internet is reliable, it's both reliable and unreliable, but at least it's better than nothing. And so with Bing Chat, the language model does a Bing search, and then it takes the pages that it finds and it summarizes them and uses that information first to answer your question or whatever you're asking it to do. So it's grounding its knowledge in some external source, which is search results from Bing, right? Bard does the same thing. Perplexity AI does the same thing. And the nice thing about those is it has a link and you can go see exactly which pages they got their answer from. And then, of course, that page might be misinformation or disinformation or a spammy old website. And I've heard also, I saw some paper that said that tools like Bing Chat sometimes link to sources that weren't really appropriate for the subject. They just didn't get
Yeah.
good results. It's probably based on Bing's algorithm or whatever, but anyway, at least there's something, and you can follow those links and you can say, okay, yeah, this makes sense.
I
And it's
think one,
talking to those.
yeah, and I think one thing to kind of acknowledge is that not all of the large language models actually search the web.
Right. Like
So
the
your
free
search,
version, ChatGPT does not. And that's what most people use because it's free and it's
yeah,
and it's popular and it's famous. So that one doesn't search the web. But if you pay $20 a month for ChatGPT Plus, for a while there, they had a way to search the web with that, but they turned it off recently, just temporarily. It's still off right now, because people were able to ask it to show articles that were behind paywalls without paying for them. So they turned that off and they're going to try to fix that and then they'll put it back. So we're eagerly awaiting that to come back because it worked pretty well. But in the meantime, Bing Chat uses the same underlying model, GPT-4. And so, but Bing Chat acts a little differently than ChatGPT, even the Plus version, because it's been trained to talk in a certain conversational style to kind of keep the conversation going, to have sort of this friendly attitude. And, so it feels different when you're talking to it than ChatGPT, just because of that different training. So it's always worth trying more than one of these tools. There's also Claude. Claude is not yet connected to the internet, but it's a very powerful model. And there's also Perplexity AI, which I really like because it's like Bing. It goes out and searches, but it has even more features within it, even in the free version. Um, when you click through to look at the source it got, you can also click on a thing that shows all the sources on one page. And if you want to, you can eliminate a couple of those and it'll do the search over again. Like if you know that that's not a good source, that might
right.
be a good thing that we could be teaching students to do. Like pick a topic that we know is going to get some spammy internet pages, and have them look at what it finds and then X out the ones that aren't good and tell it to do it again. And you can also tell it to add more sources, though you don't get to pick what they are. It'll just go out and find some more, and then it'll rewrite what it says. So I love that feature about Perplexity AI. And I've listened to the developer of that on a podcast. He's really interesting. It's worth looking him up. I forget his name right now, but he's really trying to make a good tool for people that you can use for like search.
Yeah, and there are a number of other contenders coming out there. Consensus looks at what
Yeah.
most people say about a particular research question.
Mhm.
There's a whole bunch of them, and I think they're worth testing out, particularly in an academic environment,
Yeah.
high school
Yeah.
environment, because I think that even however good these tools are, there are going to be materials that teachers and professors are going to want you to access, and they're likely to be behind paywalls.
Mhm.
One of the things I read was the AP News Archive was collaborating. I can't remember whether it was Google or Bing, but their content was going to be available, and that's proprietary content that many libraries subscribe to. So how is this going to work? Are you worried that students are going to be very heavily reliant on generative AI text tools for their research? Do we have to? Are we going to have an even harder time pushing them into the library database hub? to do their research?
I think it's always going to be challenging to get students to use library databases and to use them effectively. Before AI came out, it was just Google, right? Everybody would just use Google and just type in whatever. And that's the thing that most kids, like high school kids, come to college knowing how to do or being used to doing. And so now it'll be similar, I think, with ChatGPT. And it's always a challenge to, I think we need to embed ourselves into courses that they're required to take anyway, because they're not always going to come to the library or come to us, and work with the instructors to help embed it into everything they do. And I think we could use the sort of excitement that students feel about, the fun parts of ChatGPT and the image tools, because it is kind of fun, to get them interested in learning more, like what does it do well, what does it not do well, what can you use it for, what is really good to use it for, and not act like we're all afraid of it and we're just going to like shove it under the rug or whatever,
So
and then, but then they can see if they can have firsthand experience with seeing what they can get from things that are behind paywalls, and then see how they could combine that with what they do, like to brainstorm a topic or to come up with more keywords, all of that.
I
Then I
think
think
that's really an important point to make. Um, Among the real challenges for a lot of students is they're walking into a topic unaware of the conversation that has happened
Mhm.
before.
Yeah.
They're finding in a database, they'll find one article without context generally. It
Mhm.
might be the scholar that their teacher wants them to look at, but they're walking into it without context. And so among the things that Chat GPT and some of the other large language models can work with them on, is summarizing
Yeah.
material.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's really good at
and in those
summarizing.
summaries, as you said, there are going to be keywords, there's going to be vocabulary. You can even ask for a glossary around
Right.
something.
And you can say, explain it like I'm five, like if you still don't get it. And, there's a lot of tools out there now. There's one called Explain Paper that I like, where you upload your own PDF. And then I've tried a bunch of those, but the reason I like Explain Paper is that you can just highlight one section at a time and have it rewrite that in a way that you can understand. And then you read a little farther and then you highlight another paragraph and have it, like, you can kind of chunk it out rather than having it rewrite the whole paper. And I really like that tool. It's called Explain Paper. And I think
So
that's something we should be recommending to students.
I
And
think that, you know what, I think there's a libguide in this, like
yeah,
tools to support generative AI tools to support your research,
yeah,
that are really going to make a difference in your process.
mhm,
It's not necessarily the content. It's the process. It's the research process, and
yeah,
that may be changing a bit.
yeah, yeah. I think that I'd love to be an undergrad now with all the new tools, compared to how it used to be in the old days. It's just so much easier,
So
to,
we were talking earlier also about the whole notion of how um, bibliometrics, I'm not sure if that's the right term for this, is made simpler, where you can upload an article to some of these searchier tools, and it will find like articles across disciplines. So you may be only working in psychology and using psych info, but there might be a scholar in another discipline or field who's doing similar research, and this may be the way for you to help to discover these things.
right. Because what if the article that's really important for you to find doesn't have any of the keywords that you're using, to search, but it really is about that, which is quite possible. And the language models can help you find that stuff because it just has such a vast knowledge of the English language, and what matches with what. There's a tool called Elicit. Have you tried that
Yeah,
one?
I
Elicit.
love Elicit. Why don't you describe it though? Because I want my students to try it a lot.
It searches over what they say is 175 million research papers, and I think it got them all from open access sources. And then it lets you do things with those, like summarize them, find like articles, and so on. And it's like it's its own universe of just research papers instead of the entire internet. So
Microsoft Academic used to do that where it would find author connections and subject connections and create these really intricate maps that I see Elicit going in that direction. And then we're also seeing, I read yesterday that Core, I've been waiting for Core GPT, which
Mhm.
is supposed to be the open access model. So it's going to have all the open access papers, perhaps a lot of the stuff that has
Right.
been stored in silos that we call repositories that
Hmm.
people can't really get to all that easily.
Yeah. It's another good reason to advocate for more and more open access publishing so that, they can be consumed or used to train all these models and become part of it.
So, what is it that you think these tools do best? And let's think broadly about it. I know that, one of the things I discovered just recently is that you can add, um, help me with my vocabulary, that I can add plugins to ChatGPT and I can add a coding interpreter or tool. I'm just beginning to discover these things because I don't work in a lot of those areas.
Huh?
I know you've made some discoveries. What do you
Yeah. Well, I got a ChatGPT Plus account early on, and I really like it because it uses the more capable model GPT-4. And like I said earlier, for a while there, they had one that connected to the internet, so it acted kind of like Bing does. But it also has plugins. And when I first saw the plugins and read about them, I was pretty excited because it's like an app store, and I always taught about apps. But I'm a little bit disappointed plugins, I have to say. Only a few of them seem to work well, and a whole bunch of other ones don't, and they come and go. I think it's because it's super easy to make a plugin. Like pretty much any Joe Schmo can make a plugin and submit it. And at first, they didn't have a good way to even search all the list of plugins or find good ones. You just had to kind of browse this humongous list on different pages. But there are some plugins that work well, like Wolfram Alpha, if you're familiar
Oh,
with,
oh yeah.
because that has a lot of math and science stuff that it can do that ChatGPT cannot do. But when you add that, then it can do that. It uses Wolfram Alpha to do the things that it can't do and then puts it together with the language that it has. So that's a really good one. There's another one, I think it's Vox something that searches YouTube and makes transcripts of YouTube videos and lets you work with those. That's a good one. However, I love Code Interpreter, which is this other
Yeah.
tool that it has. And it sounds like it's just for coders, because it's going to interpret code, but it's for anybody. You don't have to be a programmer to use it. What's cool is it has a little plus and you can upload a document. Let's say it's a spreadsheet or a CSV file, or you can upload all sorts of things, images, PowerPoint files, PDFs, all sorts of things. And then you can ask questions of it. And the thing that it's really good at is working with data. Like, for example, when I first tested it, I have a Google sheet that I've been keeping since 1999, I think. It's in a list of every movie that I've ever gone to, including ones that I watched on streaming. And in the spreadsheet, I have the name of the movie, the date, who I saw it with, what theater I saw it at, or was it like Netflix or HBO or whatever. And then I give it a rating of a 1, 2, or a 3. And I also have a genre, like, is it classics, comedy, documentary, whatever. So I have this huge spreadsheet, right? So I uploaded that and I asked it a bunch of questions. Like I said, who have I seen the most movies with? And what theater have I gone to more than any other theater? And because it's such a large chunk of data, it's really interesting because I really did not know. And you just ask plain English questions of it. And then I said, okay, make me a pie chart showing the different genres of movies I've seen. And so then I could see that, oh, my top two are drama and documentary, right? Maybe it was comedy and documentary. And it showed nice in a pie chart there. And you can do all sorts of things. So I thought, okay, I'm going to use this for something more serious. So with all of our online tutorials, we use Jotform to make a little feedback form where students can say how effective they thought the tutorial was. And it's just a simple rating scale of 1 to 5 stars. And then there's a box where they can type comments. So I go to Jotform, I download all the comments and ratings from one of our tutorials. And then I just upload that to Code Interpreter. And then I start asking a lot of questions like how many students have filled this out, and what is the average rating? It was like 4.6 or something. So we're like, oh, that's good. We kind of knew that because Jotform tells you that. But then you can go on and you can say, well, what else can you tell me about this data? And say, well, we can do sentiment analysis. However, it's not completely accurate all the time, but you can try it if you want, because sentiment analysis is a hard thing. Like with
Yeah.
that, it's like looking at all the comments and deciding if they're positive, negative, or neutral. So I said, okay, try it. So I went through and it made some percentages and lists and charts of how many comments were positive, how many were neutral, and how many negative. So I said, okay, 47 out of these thousands were negative. So I said, show me the list of negative comments. And then it just listed them all. And then I realized some of those weren't really negative, they were positive. So I said, okay, for numbers 2, 3, 6, 9, and 23, change those to positive and do it all over again and give me a new chart. And all this is so fast, it's just like, it's great. Like you could, I mean, I don't think sentiment analysis is the strongest thing that you can do, but I've seen Professor Ethan Mollick from Wharton, he's doing all this
Oh my
kind of
God,
nice.
he's my hero.
Yeah, he does a ton of stuff with spreadsheets and stuff and data, and
Mhm.
he's got information on some good prompts you can use with the code interpreter. I still want to try those to make it give you the best things it can give you when it comes to infographics and charts and all kinds of stuff. So I think this is really going to open up the field of data analysis to more people and make it easier. Though I think you still need to have basic literacy about data literacy, like how correct is your data, and like what is it really based on and that kind of stuff. You still need that kind of literacy. But wow, it's a really cool tool, and it seems to be very, it can convert files to different types and then you can
Yeah.
download them again. It can do all sorts of things. It's really fun to
And
experiment with.
it's kind of hidden
Yeah.
under those
It's
three dots, and then you have to activate.
Well, first you have to pay $20 a month to have the
I
plus.
think I've already done it.
Yeah, and then you have to have this drop down menu and you have to pick it from that and then you start working with it. But yeah, I really like it.
So one thing I heard you say was, tell me what else you can do with this, which is something I never thought to do. I get
Yeah,
this, I fix
yeah,
the prompt, and I never thought to ask that kind of open-ended question.
yeah. It's pretty cool. Like we keep forgetting that you can just talk to it like you would talk to a human.
Yeah.
It's just easy to forget that and ask it to tell you what it can do. Related to that, there's another new feature in the ChatGPT Plus that they just recently activated, and it's where you can put in sort of a two system prompts behind the scenes that you can tell it about yourself and you can tell it what you usually use it for. And then it keeps a memory of that so that every time you ask a question, it uses that somehow. So at first I thought, well, that's weird because I never use it the same way twice. I'm always doing demos for other people and experimenting, and sometimes it's for my personal life, and sometimes it's for work, and sometimes it's either. So I can't think of one thing I could tell it to be like that would apply to everything. But I thought, but wait a minute, I can just tell it more than one and tell it when to use which. So I said, okay, I'm an e-learning developer. I create a lot of tutorials for students about information literacy, blah, 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 blah. I do webinars and courses. I'm teaching people about AI literacy, blah, blah, blah. Also, in my personal life, I'm a vegetarian. I have an e-bike and I'm interested in climate change and blah, 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 all these things. And then I told it, okay, so every time I ask a question, ask me, is it for my personal life or is it for work? Is it for demonstration purposes? And then if it's for personal life, you can have a friendly, chatty demeanor and talk to me in an informal way. And if it's for work, talk like you're talking to an undergraduate college student about some serious stuff that they need to learn. And so it did it. Like I saved it and then I went back and I tried it. Now I have that in there. You can change it anytime, but I have that in there. And every time I ask a question, it says, okay, I'd be happy to do that. But first, is it for your personal life or is it
Oh, I
for
love it.
demonstration purposes? And so it's kind of cool because at first I was just so negative about even wanting to use that, but I really like it now. And I could change it anytime I want, or I could think of more options. I might even think of, like, sometimes I'm doing this on my phone and I don't want to have to type a lot of stuff. So I just typed the word personal. I thought, well, I wonder if it could just respond if I just put in the word P. Like I should have gave it some instructions that said,
Oh, wow.
if I type one, it's personal. If I type two, it's for work. And I could go back and do that. I just haven't had a chance to yet. But it's like you got to just keep thinking like you can tell it anything, you can tell it how to act. And it
Yeah.
makes such a difference.
And just very simple things like format. We sometimes forget to put that in. And
Yeah.
one of the things I was really impressed with that you shared in one of your webinars was you're preparing these tutorials and you asked for a comic script of this particular thing you wanted to teach about. And so you were able to move that comic script into the software that you're using to create these tutorials with comic characters. Made so much sense and made the task so much easier, and it's still your work.
Yeah, yeah, it's really fun. I make videos with Beyond and it's animation software. So I asked it to make a script for an animated video and I told what I wanted it to cover and stuff. And I had to do a bunch of versions of that till I could get it how I like. That's the other thing. You have to just keep working with it. Don't if it doesn't give you what you want right away, don't just forget about it and walk away. Just say, well, that's close, but I'd really like you to try this other thing, and then just keep working with it till it gives you something useful. And in the end, you're always going to be the final editor of it anyway and fact checker. So
Yes, keep the human in the loop.
yeah, human in the
So,
loop.
so another thing I just want to amplify that I heard you say, relating to the notion that Wolfram Alpha is now part of this, and we're seeing other applications as part of these large language learning models. Um, so in the old days, we were talking earlier that, we talked about app smashing, using more than one tool to help you accomplish a goal. And what we're seeing now is, I don't know if they're mergers, but some kinds of acquisitions or additions based on other software that already exists or things that people are making. I think one of the most powerful things, which was within the same company, of course, was the appearance of Google Lens in Bard, which basically now changes it into a visual search,
Mhm.
and allows you to find information based on visual information, to
Yeah.
get content based on visual information.
Right, right. So it's all moving in a multimodal direction, and that's the word people use about it, that pretty soon we won't just talk about language models. No, they're all going to be multimodal, which means images, text, video, speech, all of it. So I think that's the direction it's all going. The new open source one, well, it's not completely open source, but the open one called Llama 2 that Meta just released, that's multimodal. And so
Oh,
that's a big competitor to ChatGPT, and it doesn't really have a fully public interface yet, but you can try it. Perplexity has a little interface to it. You can try just the text part of it for
I've been
now.
waiting for that one.
Yeah, check out Llama on Perplexity, and then you can
Okay.
test it. It's really fast too. It types really fast. But anyway, yeah, I think they're all going in a multimodal direction. And so we do need to learn about all the image creation stuff too, you know.
Yeah, and that's pretty exciting too. And
Yeah.
it gives us, it's frightening in some ways, with all of this stuff. The idea that script writing is simplified and art is put in the hands of people who have never discovered their own artistic talent before. And how does art change? How do artists' worlds change? How do writers' worlds change? I think that's, and what are the ethical issues surrounding that? How do librarians guide in that, and ensuring that their process is acknowledged when they've used tools, when information is gathered, it still is acknowledged and cited. So all those things are part of, we have to make new strategies
Yeah.
for for being good digital citizens.
Yeah, yeah. I like what Professor Ethan Malik has done. He describes on his newsletter about he doesn't just use traditional citation methods because they don't quite fit with what people do with ChatGPT. So he has the students write an appendix to their paper where they list all the prompts they used, which ones worked, which ones didn't, how they modified it, like a whole big appendix because it's more of a narrative that you need to describe, instead of just, it's not like you
Absolutely.
can quote directly like you would from another human being in a paper. So I think that's a creative solution.
Yeah,
Also, I think
we're
that,
actually doing that in this class.
oh,
We
good, good. And I think that I know a lot of artists and writers are really scared and with good reason because, historically, the big corporations just mess with the little guys, right? And so but I think that the artists that embrace these tools and learn to work with them, like I'm taking a 3 webinar series right now taught by an artist from the UK, and she really talks about how she, as an artist, uses this like any other tool, like when photography was new. And she uses her background in art history to know like how to prompt the art tools. And then she changes it, like maybe pulls it into something else and edits it. And she just uses it as a creative tool. It's not like people think, oh, you just push a button and then it makes this boring art that doesn't have any feeling behind it. Like she had a bunch of quotes from all the things that people criticize it for, saying, oh, it's not made by a human, it doesn't have any soul. And the thing is, like, I've been following a couple of groups on Facebook where people are sharing their images they made like with Midjourney. And wow, some of those,
Oh,
I mean, there's all the ones that look cliche, that's copying all the same stuff that everybody copies. And if you just see only those, you think like, yeah, yeah. But wow, some of these are really cool. Like if you follow Midjourney Official on Facebook, there's a lot of them are posted there. And I think there's another group called AI Art Creation or something like that. And I've just been saving a lot of these images to my camera roll and then looking at them later and thinking about, wow, what it took to prompt it enough to make something that looks like this, to know enough about styles to tell it what to make it like. Some of them use like old photography mixed with collage, like really different looking stuff that doesn't look like it was made with an AI, but is really artistically beautiful. And like this professor who's teaching it, she's like, yeah, I mean, we all need to learn about shape and form and line and color and apply those to how we use these tools. You can use it as an artistic tool like anything else. And so I think, I think it's the same thing with writing too. Like I saw that Sarah Silverman is one of the people behind the lawsuits for the writers
yes.
and the strike, everything. And I am very pro strike, pro labor and everything, but I think there's misunderstandings about how these tools actually work. And that's why we all need AI literacy, of course. But like people think that it's like consumed all of this writing and it's just a bunch of words in a giant database, right? And that people are going to pull some of those words out when they use the tools, when it's nothing like that. It's math in a neural network. That's like it's just a new thing for people, the fact that machines can learn, and once they've learned, you can throw that data off to the side and then they can just use their knowledge to create stuff. And I think a lot of people don't understand that yet. And that's one thing we can help teach about. I'm working on some animated videos right now about, the technology behind ChatGPT to try to make it simple, straightforward for anyone to understand. And I think once you start to get how it really works, you can see that it is transformative, which fits under fair use. And there's some interesting articles from Electronic Frontier Foundation and Creative Commons about how if the lawsuits go in the direction of saying, that it's not fair use, that's going to be bad for the everyday artist. It's going to backfire on people, I think, and it's also going to be very difficult. The lawyers all say it's going to be very difficult for people to win a case where they get compensated for AIs that have trained on their data, because there's billions and billions and billions of stuff in there. You can't show direct evidence that exactly your stuff was used, and then how would they ever figure out how to pay you for it? And so it seems that these cases are very unlikely to win, according to various lawyers that I've seen talk about it. And what I think we do need, though, is some better ways to compensate artists, and I know people talked about universal basic income, especially with the pandemic and everything. I think we need things like that. I saw some other article where people talked about new tax structures that there could be some sort of fund for artists that comes out of tax dollars or something, and we just need to think creatively about changes to society and laws and things. So the old copyright laws, they were meant to like encourage creativity, but they can backfire, like they can make it so that only the big corporations who can afford very expensive lawyers to represent them will win every time, like, so those are just my feelings about all of this stuff. I think we need to be ethical about, and we can use Adobe Firefly because they have said that if you get sued, they're going to represent you.
Yeah,
And
and it's it's one of my favorites.
yeah, yeah.
I love it, and I love that it already comes out with a watermark. So when I'm using them, and I'm going to describe my prompt, but I'm also happy that I can share where it came from.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
So you brought up a couple of things, and one of them is we're in the middle of this right now, and it is hard to grasp what the rules are. What copyright is going to look like, what in what direction these decisions are really going to go. But you've also brought up the notion that we need to keep up in different ways. Right now, for instance, I've shifted the way I am finding information about these trends. I'm
Mhm.
following you. I am now following blogs on Medium that I never followed before with experts I've never heard of before. And I feel like my old network is not feeding me what I need. So,
Yeah.
and there, I mean, I think this is really critical for librarians. You need to figure out where it is this information is going to come from and how it's going to serve you. How do you figure this stuff out? You are one of those people who feed me.
Um, I love newsletters, right? Email newsletters, and they're kind of all the rage right now anyway, especially with Substack. That's the platform I use for my newsletter.
Mhm.
And so, and also, even though Twitter's kind of gone downhill, there's still a lot of good people to follow on Twitter. And so between those two things, and also
And
TikTok.
they're moving around, so they're staying on Twitter, but they're
Yeah.
also on
Like
those other emerging
I
platforms.
created a Mastodon account and I
Yeah.
use Mastodon and Twitter now. I post most of my things to both.
And
And
what are there hashtags you're following?
yeah, well, I just follow like ChatGPT, AI, education. I tag all of my stuff with tags like that because more people on Mastodon, you can follow a tag more easily. So I've been using the tags a lot more when I post. But I
Threads?
also I follow I look at TikTok first of all for a little bit of time every day. And I started finding some people that were talking about AI there. My favorite person there is Rachel Woods. She's a young woman who talks to business startups and stuff, and she's really knowledgeable about AI and she's done a lot of cool things. So she started out on TikTok and now she's also got short form videos on YouTube and LinkedIn. And so I also started following a bunch of AI people on LinkedIn too, because some people only post there. So
Noticed
LinkedIn,
that.
TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, and Substack newsletters, those are my sources. And every time, well, every day during lunch, I watch a YouTube video about AI just because I'm so into it, right? I have my iPad sitting there on propped up. I'm eating my lunch, and there's a really good one called AI Explained. I think that's the one. I'll
Mhm.
send it to you later. This guy like talks through some of the research papers coming out for a general audience, and he's really smart, and that's a really good one. And then, of course, then YouTube algorithm starts to feed me similar stuff, and so I find more and more. Same thing with TikTok, and so now I mostly spend my time on YouTube. These YouTube videos, one per day, maybe two, and then also I read like five different AI newsletters at the end of the day every day and first thing in the morning when I'm just laying on the couch before breakfast, right? So,
Yeah.
of course, that's an obsessive use of it, but you can do a scaled down version of that. And whenever I see someone who's got really good content, I try to follow them wherever they post most. But I think we really, like I always said in my book, Keeping Up with Emerging Technologies, you need to like look outside your own field, your own discipline. You always need to look multidisciplinary and all the different sources. And then you can bring knowledge from one area to another. And then also, I use Facebook a little bit too. There's that higher ed discussions of AI writing group that a lot of professors are on. So every once in a while, I post something of interest that I think would be of interest to them on there. And I see interesting things that they post. Mostly it's like professors going, oh, what am I going to do? Like, but there's a lot of good information shared there too. So yeah, I just think go across all the media and across disciplines and just start collecting and then have them come to you. Oh, I also have a Google alert set up for AI literacy, that phrase. And so I find random stuff. Not everything there is good, but that phrase AI literacy is being used all over the world right now. Like I find a lot of sources from the UK and India and all sorts of things. Some of them are good, some of them aren't, but I find stuff that I wouldn't have found any other way by having a Google alert set up. So between all those sources, and then of course it's like how do you keep track of it all, like I started in January trying to track all this, and I just set up a Google Doc for myself and started pasting stuff in there in order to create that webinar. And now I feel like it's been enough time where I have a basic understanding because I had to learn it enough to teach it. But I think that's a really good way to do things, like give yourself a challenge to teach somebody else that you know about this stuff and learn it well enough to explain it to them, like a person who's not a librarian, who's not an IT person, just a regular person who's a friend of yours, and explain things to them and answer their questions. And you need to know it well enough to like say things that are true. And, yeah, I've just always been, not everyone likes to do that. So it depends on your personality, like if you're a person who does not like, you feel overwhelmed with all this stuff coming at you and you do not want to do anything like that, then you find the people that do that and you meet with them every so often, like have lunch once a week or get on Zoom like once a month with one of those people that are like me, that are just gathering all the info and get the news from them. And then these two different types of people can work together in a complementary way, because sometimes the people that are good at gathering aren't so good at implementing stuff and vice versa. And some people are kind of in the middle. So when I used to do the webinar about keeping up with emerging tech, I had a little sort of BuzzFeed style quiz that you would fill out about what's your tech personality. I could send you a link to that if you want. I think I still have it somewhere.
I feel like we might have done that.
Did you? Yeah,
Yeah, I think we did.
it talks about that. And I used to use that as a way to start out a talk about keeping up with technology, and then to talk about the different people with different skill sets working together on projects, using their best skills. But, I'm one of those people that just loves to like find all the new information, read it, or I also listen to a bunch of podcasts too on this. I just cannot even keep up with my own podcasts. I use Pocket Casts app and I have a playlist of over 800 items that have for the past few years. Of course,
Goodness.
I just keep adding stuff to it when I find it, and then every once in a while before bed, I'll listen to it while using a coloring app, because that puts my brain in a different space,
There's some cool AI coloring tools too now.
Yeah, yeah. So,
All right, but Nicole, let's just, like, I want to respect your time, and I'm as
sure.
excited about this as you
Yeah.
are. Um, and I know I have students who are illustrating all of those different personality types relating to not only AI and other technologies. How about we close with advice for these aspiring professionals as it relates to AI? Do you have any tips other than keeping up, which we covered? Maybe we covered a lot. I don't know, but there's
Yeah,
no, you can't
yeah.
hide from this stuff, right?
I would repeat to keep experimenting with it.
Hmm.
And when you hear about a new tool, try it. And don't just try it once, like try it a few times over the course of a month or two, Just keep getting that hands-on experience with all this stuff, as much as you can, because that's the best way to learn it. And you can learn a lot just with your hands-on experience without taking any online courses or anything. Just keep on trying it and keep trying different things and learn by experimenting, and just just keep using it. Like if you can't think of what to use it for, then ask ChatGPT. Like, what are some things
Good
you can
idea.
help me with? Or
But
just
I think that the way maybe we jump in best is by using it for tasks that we hate, or the things that
Mhm.
those really awful problems that we can't
Yeah,
figure out
right.
how to do.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to me that we all thought AI would be the thing that takes away the menial jobs, but it seems to be taking away the creative stuff first. But it doesn't really take it away because it's more about learning to be creative, using it as a creative tool. So it just kind of surprised everybody, I think, that it's so, you know, generative and creative and all
Pervasive.
that. Yeah, I was asking ChatGPT, like, how would you define, first of all, you give it a role, right? So you're an
Yeah.
expert in creativity. How would you define creativity? And then I took what it said about combining things from different areas and said, okay, give me a list of plants, and now give me a list of musical instruments. And now using those two lists, see if you can come up with some inventions that combine those two things. And it came up with this really cool list of like, a cactus drum and like just all these different things, like really fast, like, and then I said, well, tell me which ones of those are actually viable that could be built. And then it told me which ones it thought would be the
Wow.
most viable. And so that, I think that is creativity. And just because it can do that kind of stuff, I think it is creative.
Well,
And,
I think one of the things that I feel like people have defined creativity as is the ability to see patterns and connect dots.
mhm.
And if if there is a tool that will bring remote dots into play so we
Mhm.
see patterns we've never seen before, then I think it's a win.
Yeah. And of course, it's always going to be the human being making the final judgments about this stuff. But boy, it gives us some extra powers, you know?
I
It
love
makes
it.
us able to do all kinds of cool stuff. And yeah, I think we just keep using it. And over time, we'll see it change quite a bit. And then we'll, you won't be, just don't be left behind like by just ignoring it. Just keep using it, use it for different things, talk to people about it.
And I think recognize that, there aren't that many times in our lives where we're really in the middle of some profound change.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is one of them. People have
Yeah.
pointed to the iPhone or Wikipedia, but that's one thing.
Hmm.
It did change the way we live, but this feels bigger somehow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Printing press sort of bigger, maybe. I don't know.
I think so. Yep. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out over the next few years.
Or
As
maybe in a couple of years we'll reconvene.
yes. Oh, can I mention one last thing?
Oh, please
Um,
do.
some people, many of us are very worried about climate change, right? And feeling kind of pessimistic sometimes. There is a group, and you can find them on LinkedIn, that combines AI and climate change, and they're doing all sorts of positive work, like using AI to help with all kinds of amazing science projects that could help figure out how to make things more energy efficient and all sorts of stuff. So if people start talking to you about how this is just one more thing that's going to ruin the climate, put it into the context of like the carbon output of everything, including traditional banking and all, and driving a car every day and all these things in manufacturing. It's there's both good and bad uses for all these technologies, and we need to get involved with like finding the good uses and pointing people toward the good uses, and maybe helping young people to do a career in like AI ethics, or making it better, getting rid of bias and stuff like that. So
We're creating citizen science projects like the one you
yeah,
just described, using tools that are even more powerful than we had before when we were
right,
trying to do this group work together. So,
right.
wow, hadn't even thought of that.
Yeah, we can point people in that good, using technology for good kind of direction.
Nicole, thank you so much.
Sure.
I'm so grateful for your time, and I know my students will be inspired.
Yeah, thank you. It was fun.